Hey guys, I got the Supra on the dyno at the Real Street meet. The car made 464 horsepower to the wheels, which for stock JDM 440 injectors and a stock ECU, that's a lot. I was running 12.8 pounds, which was too much. I'd recommend running 10 with those injectors. I was lucky enough to have Jay drive the car and give me his opinion on the car, and he actually really liked the setup and the turbo response that the car had. What's up guys, over at Mike's doing some work on the Supra. I'm going to go ahead and show you some of the stuff we're going to be doing to it and replacing on the car to hopefully get to the 700 to 800 horsepower range with this car very soon. Mike's working on pulling the harmonic balancer because we're going to be switching it with an ATI aftermarket balancer just to be on the safe side, since all this stuff's having to come off anyways. Might as well replace it with something that we shouldn't have any issues with in the future. Don't forget to take that tensioner arm off because it'll hit the bottom of the harmonic balancer there at the bottom. You can see it right there. You just have to take the arm off to get the harmonic balancer off the rest of the way. And there it goes. Oh wow, look at the cover. It's all cut open. Alright, so me and Mike are doing some work to the Supra. We've got a fuel system that I got from 2JZ Motorsports. It's used. It's the Titan billet hanger, Titan fuel rail, stainless lines, ID 1700 injectors. I've got a new timing belt, ATI damper, new front main seal, new intake gaskets I got from Induction Performance, and I went ahead and decided to go with the ECU Masters ECU, one with the black version. This is the like adapter piggyback kind of harness thing to adapt to the stock harness. And I've got, you know, wideband and some other sensors in there. Went with GSC, the behive springs. Also going to replace the valve stem seals, and back here we've got GSC stage 2 cams, and yeah, so we're working on that right now. This is where we're at the moment. Got the radiator out, got the harmonic balancer out, and the intake manifold off. As you can see in here, the cam sensors seem to be leaking down, and it was getting past the metal gasket into the intake. So we'll clean all that up. Here's the lower part of the intake manifold. And I'm going to be welding in bungs into the injector holes for the ID 1700 injectors, so they'll fit in there. Here's the old JDM fuel rail with the injectors. So now we can see the timing belt assembly a bit better. Also just pulled the valve covers off. And as you can see, it's pretty nasty looking in there, to be honest. It seems like it cleaned up a little bit back in here. But yeah, it still looks pretty gnarly in there. So it just means that the people that had this motor beforehand probably just didn't change the oil on time. But still working good. Once the valve stem seals are replaced and cams are in, should be good to go. So next up is going to be popping the cams out, and that's that. Alright, well, we're at the point where we're ready to pull the cams out. So Mike's going to pull one, I'm going to pull the other, and here we go. Alright, man, these things are all crusty and nasty. Look how burned up they are. Number one. I'm number one, you're number two.
That's the Supra guru.
Alright, well, now to the fun part, pulling the buckets and springs and the valve stem seals. We have to pull this gear off, and this on the back is not attached to it, but it's got these little teeth, and the crank angle sensor uses these teeth to figure out what position it's in. So I'm going to go ahead and weld this onto the back of here in 3, 2, 1. Alright, we're back at my house, and I cleaned up the gear a little bit, and I'm going to go ahead and weld it up. Pop. And that's it, welded up, just 3 little spots. Pretty simple to do. Next up, this is the lower intake manifold. I'm going to be having this powder coated, so luckily the powder coater guy was nice enough to go ahead and sandblast the areas where the injectors are, because I need to weld in these little adapters so that I can run the ID 1700 injectors. So the instructions say to silicone these in, but I've heard they leak when you do that. So I'm just going to go ahead and weld these in, and then I'm going to go ahead and drop it off at the powder coaters. So go ahead and weld all 6 of these in real quick. Alright, so I got the first one welded up, and obviously not the prettiest looking thing, but it's done. The hard part is this is so thin, and it's a different material than this cast, and the cast needs to get so much heat that this wants to melt, and I can't get any weld on the inside diameter, so it's really hard to do it, but it is doable, so I'll go ahead and get the rest of them done. It's been a long time since I've welded professionally, so I'm doing pretty good, I think. I borrowed my friend's TIG welder. It's an Everlast 200. They're pretty good machines. A few people have asked me recommendations on cheap welders, and I think the Everlast brand offers a large variety of different types of welders, and I've never had any personal issues with them. My buddy's does have one small issue, and that's the light here went out. Something that would be fixable under warranty, but since he bought this one from Home Depot and he can't find his receipt, he's having a hard time getting it warrantied. I know if you buy the welder directly from Everlast, I believe you get a 5-year warranty, so something to think about. And I think mine had a similar issue or an issue with the pedal, and they sent me out a new one right away. So really good customer service when you're dealing with them directly as the consumer. All done. Not the prettiest, but it'll work. And that was a pain to weld. So now I'm gonna head back over to the powder coater, drop this off to be powder coated. He said hopefully it'll be done in a couple days. And then I'm gonna go head over to Mike's and we're gonna go put in the valve stem seals and the springs and retainers and hopefully get the cams in so we can check clearances today as well. Alright guys, we're back at Mike's. Currently we're putting in GSC behive valve springs, GSC valve stem seals, and the retainers that came with it. I'll go ahead and show you where we're at so far. So we got cylinder 1, 2, 5, and 6 done. So I'll go ahead and film cylinder 3 so you guys have an idea of how we're doing this. So we've got this bar set up on here. And so all we're gonna do is press down on the lever after he compresses the cylinder. So the cylinder has to be compressed and the piston has to be at top dead center, otherwise the valve will drop down into the cylinder and you'll have a bad day. So here we go, gonna depress it. He's gonna use a little magnet to get the keepers.
Two.
You got both of them? Alright, we'll let up on that and we'll move to the next one. Hard to do it while filming, but there we go. You got both of them? Alright, so now you can just pull the spring and the retainer out as one piece. So there's 1 and 2. And also Mike's got paper towels in here, and that's so that in case the keeper falls down you don't lose it. These are the oil passages, so it's good just to fill those up with paper towels. But now we've got to pull the valve stem seals, and we don't have a valve stem puller, so we've been using needle nose vice locks or vice grips, the needle nose ones. It seems to work, just a little more time consuming. And there's one. That's what it looks like. So Mike's putting in the new valve stem seals, greased them up ahead of time. And he's using what millimeter is that?
11.
An 11 millimeter socket. He's pushing them in first, and then he's going to give them a little tap with the hammer to make sure they're seated. You don't want to hit them too hard. And that's it for the valve stem seals. These are the GSC behive springs and the retainer at the top that they come with. Let's go ahead and put these in. There's one. Second one. That's it. So both of those are in there. Now we're going to go ahead and compress it down. Here we go. These are a lot harder to compress. He's got to kind of line those up, one on each side. And then he's got to kind of center the spring as I'm going up with it. Probably hard to see. I could try and zoom in as I'm holding this down. No, it's going to have to move more towards the steering wheel of the car, like at an angle. There we go. See, and that's it. He's gonna clean it so you can see it better. So It's kind of dark, but you can see the keepers in there and how this one's sticking up. So we've only got 2 left on the intake side. I'm going to go ahead and put the camera down. This is a lot easier to do without the camera in my hand. And hopefully we can get these all in before it gets dark. Alright, so it got too dark last night to finish this, so we're back at it the next day. I'm going to go ahead and show you in the daylight changing these out. The intake side is done. It's the GSC behive springs and retainers. And we're going to do cylinder 1. So we're going to compress it. And I'll show you how that's done. Alright, so the cylinder is compressed. I'm going to go ahead and push down on the valve spring. Both of them are out. I'll only move to the other side. So the stock springs are super light to push down. Now, all I gotta do is pick out the retainer and the spring, both sides. Pulling the valve stem seals on the intake side was pretty difficult, but on the exhaust side, because of all the heat, they're coming off pretty easy. And here's the other one. There it goes. Here we got the new valve stem seals. A little bit of grease in there. You can put them in dry. People, if you look it up online, people will go back and forth with which way is better, but I mean, I'd rather be on the safe side and just put a little grease in there so that the little boot on here doesn't tear, which, I mean, I probably wouldn't, but just to be on the safe side. So now we're going to take our 11mm socket, just gently push it down until it stops. Get the socket on there nice and even and just tap it in lightly with the hammer. And then you can kind of hear the difference in the tapping when it stops and it's bottomed out, but just really light. Got the springs there and the part number. Let's go ahead and put these in. There's one. Just kind of have to wiggle it around so it seats. So when you put it in, just kind of move it around a little bit and you'll feel it kind of seat into place. So these are a lot harder to press down, but here we go. He's just putting the keepers in place. It's hard to do this with one hand. The spring's got to go that way. And he's going to move the spring. And there it is. So now that one's seated in there. Move on to the next one. So we're going to push down the other side. You can see doing it with one hand, they feel a lot stiffer than the factory ones. So just putting the keepers in. And it's got to go towards you.
Okay.
Yeah. There we go. Alright. So as you can see, that's done. Alright, so we're back at Mike's. We've got the exhaust side cam shimmed correctly and tightened down, torqued down. Now we're working on the intake. So we moved some shims around and also picked up some other shims from Induction Performance. Thank you, Matt. And I think we've got it dialed in. I'm going to go ahead and tighten down the intake side and see if it's shimmed out correctly. going to torque these to 14 foot-pounds. So we're at the point to go ahead and torque down the cam gears. Don't forget to put the metal plate behind it and leave your valve covers off so you can put a wrench on here. So my battery's dying, so we're going to try and do this real quick. Alright, and the manifold's back from powder coat. Turned out pretty good. You can't really see my ugly welds as much now that it's powder coated, but yeah, pretty happy with it. So we're at the point now where the lower intake manifold is on, and we've got the fuel lines figured out, and so now we're about to put the injectors in and go ahead and put on the fuel rail. These are the injectors I'm going to run. They are ID 1700s. I bought these used from 2JZ Motorsports. I did drop these off at Boost Lab to have them tested, which I'm glad I did because only one of them was working. That's the thing with these things, when you let them sit, they seem to seize up. So they're able to get them all flowing correctly, and so now we're going to go ahead and put them in. So make sure you go ahead and lube up the O-rings on the injectors. It's very important. We're going to be using Silglide. This is from Napa. We've got the Titan Motorsports fuel rail in, the ID 1700 injectors. Messed with the harness a little bit to make it look a little better, and we are finally ready to put the upper intake manifold on. Got all the fittings tightened up. There's one in the middle, one here. So got the fuel pressure regulator just sitting there for now. Alright, so we've got the intake manifold back on, and we went ahead and put the front cover back on, the tensioner, the alternator, and the power steering pump. So next up is going to be the harmonic balancer, and for that we went with the ATI Supra damper. A lot of the Supra guys are running these. So Mike's in his house right now boiling the actual section that goes on at the crank to 200 degrees, and we're going to go ahead and slip that on. Alright guys, on this ATI Supra damper, got this piece on. This was pretty hard to get on. We boiled it to about 210 degrees, oiled the crankshaft, put it on, and then tightened it on by hand until we couldn't anymore, and then used an impact. Probably not the most proper way to do it, but it worked, and we've got it torqued down. Something to note for when you put these Torxes into here is that it's not a regular Torx bit. It's a T40 Plus, which I'd never heard of until we messed with this. Super hard to find. You can order them online at Home Depot if you wanted to get it ahead of time, but if you're in a pickle like we were and we needed it today, we found them at. But if you needed them right away like we did, I got this set at Northern Tools. You can look on their website. The part number was 59111, and you could see which store around you has it. But these are Torx Pluses, so essentially the little tooth is wider, so these are torque safe to actually torque them down. So if you put a regular Torx in here, it'll actually strip it out because these teeth are a little bit thicker. So this one is the T40 Plus, and it fits right in there. So if you need it in a hurry, you can get it at Northern Tools, part number 59111. And luckily my wife was able to run down there and get them and bring them to us, so thank you Novi for that. Mike got the front all put back together, radiator hoses on, radiator, clutch fan. So with the ATI Supra damper, you're going to need this serpentine belt. So there's the part number. So it is a little bit longer than the factory one. And I pretty much have all of the sensors needed for the standalone system, like rough wired in. So I've got the air intake temp sensor down there, and we have the fuel pressure sensor back here. I just have it just hanging there, but got that going. Let's see, we've got the boost solenoid and the flex fuel sensor, and this one is the fuel pressure. I just have it ran here. I ran them really long, and I've just got them taped every 8-10 inches or so, because I'm going to be running it through the factory plastic here and into the car, so then I can start wiring them in to the adapter harness that goes to the ECU. So I'm going to go ahead and put these all in place, get them ran, and I'll move on to the inside of the car where I can start figuring out where they go in that harness. But if you're curious, I just bought wire from AutoZone. That's how I spaghettied this whole thing together. Now all the wiring is tucked up out of the way, so no more mess of wires up here. Also the wideband O2 sensor. Next, we're going to move on to the interior. So now all those wires are ran into here. Could take out our plug and play harness. So now I've got to figure out where those wires connect into this harness, and go ahead and shorten these and connect them into here so that I can then plug in the ECU Masters ECU. Got the Titan Motorsports billet triple hanger, and we have three 340 AM fuel pumps, and it's a 6 AN and a 10 AN. 10 is the feed and 6 is the return.
You wanna have dump try? Can dump try?
What's up, guys? I'm just switching out the spark plugs real quick before I bring the car to get it tuned, and I went ahead and gapped the plugs at 22. I'll go ahead and show you what type of spark plugs I'm using. So those are the recommended spark plugs, and I am torquing these to 150 inch-pounds. It's really easy to overdo spark plugs, so I've just, started using these to torque them down, just so I don't overdo it, because I have a tendency to over torque stuff. Now the coils can go back in. Oops.
Oopsie.
Whoopsies. Oh, really whoopsies now. And hook the coils back up. Alright, and then this is for the twin turbo stuff, which kind of left it on there. I just kind of loop it around just in case I ever do a new harness and sell this one, and the person that buys it sticks with the twin turbos. So I just kind of stuff it down out of the way and put these guys back on. If you have old ones of these, they're just going to be super brittle and hard, so it's a pain in the butt. You're better off just getting new ones. They're a lot more soft, malleable. Alright, this can go back on. Take the oil cap off to get it on. so I'm not a tuner, and I could find very limited information about the ECU Masters ECU online, so I'm not even 100% sure if the sensors are wired incorrectly. So once I get this thing running, tuned, and everything's working properly, I'll probably do a separate video to explain where to pin everything on the ECU, because I couldn't really find any information on it online. Same with all of this. So essentially what I did was downloaded a 2JZ base map, so like a stock car. Then I went over, I go to oxygen sensor, and since I'm running the LSU4, I go ahead and put that on. Running gasoline for now. And then I went over to fueling, click on that, and you are actually injectors down there, and I went to injector wizard, and I set mine at ID 2000s, even though I have ID 1700s, but it's the closest thing in here to a 1700, so that's what I set it at. And then over here on fueling general, I changed, this would normally say 440 cc because that would be a stock 2J JDM one, so I moved it to 1700 cc's, which is what I've got in my car now. And this is the fueling table 1, and I was able to get the car to start with this setup, so it's running super rich. I don't really know where to go from here, so I just need to be able to move it to get it onto a trailer to bring it to the tuner tomorrow.